What's going on YouTube? It is Texans Take over here, back with another video. In today's video, we are simulating the rest of the Texans offseason. We know most of the moves they've made. Free agency has died down. The Texans signed Evan Brown yesterday. And obviously you can go to HoustonStressins.com to see all the moves we've made with that free agency tracker. There's a prospect tracker on there too. And then obviously there's the cap calculator. Um, and we're sitting here at 28 million here. Definitely have a little less than that now. Um, but you still have the opportunity to restructure Nico if you need to, and all that. So the thing that this one does is it places these people, available to extend with their APY that they got from the team. So someone like Dominic Robinson, for example, 3 million. You just give them that 3 million here, and then it does it automatically for you. Jake Hummel, 2.4. Um, you just give them 2.6 over 2. Um, and then someone like Braden Smith is a lot more than 10 million APY. So you put it as low as possible at 17.8, and then Sheldon Rankins, you save a couple mil there, going to 6.4 from 8.5. And then obviously Reed Blankenship, you're going to save that extra. It's 8, but you go down to like 5.3, and I think that equals the exact amount. And then Trent Brown's 5.5, so you do that as well. 5.4 there, and then Foster Moreau 3.1, and now you're pretty much where you need to be in terms of cap space. So you're sitting there around 19.2 million. You did extend Dalton Schultz as well for 12.6, but I think it's 10.3 with actually what we gave him. So down to 18.9. We released Kurt Heinisch there. Um, and then other stuff we can do is, cut Jarrett Patterson could be a potential move with the Evan Brown signing. I don't see him here. Um, so if he's not here, then you do have to go get him in free agency. And you do. So yeah, you head over to trades. You can do some deals. I don't think the Texans are going to make any more trades this offseason. Colby Parkinson's actually intriguing. That's just a lot of value to give up for a Colby Parkinson. But you can see the guys that are left from the Texans in free agency, and then Evan Brown's not there. So maybe the Cardinals still have him. So Arizona, add player. No, he's not here. Okay. What if I put Evan? Nope. No Evan there. So if we go to free agency, Evan Brown should be here potentially. No. So I don't know where he is, but you can just sign a guard for equal amount of value that you got Evan Brown for, just so the roster outlook looks eerily similar, like a Will Hernandez. It's up to 3.5 million, so you could go with anyone here. Um, and I don't see him here, so I'm guessing he's just not updated. The Kelvin Beacham's there. Um, Jonah Williams is there. Elton Jenkins is still there. Rasheed Walker's still there. So it needs to be updated a little bit, but it's quite hard to do every single deal. And we'll just head over to, who was it? Will Hernandez. I think that's equal money. Um, we gave up to 3.5, so it's probably going to be like 2.5 base salary. So we'll just give him the market value at 2.8. Make that offer, and that does confirm that signing there. And then now we're at square one. So what do we think the Texans are going to do the rest of free agency? Well, what do we need? If you go here to the command center, you can see the roster or the depth chart. Um, you need a center. Jarrett Patterson might not be here. Braden Smith's going to be your starting right tackle. So right now you're looking at Braden Smith, Ed Ingram, Andrews, Brown, and Ursery, and then Trent Brown obviously as a backup tackle. When I say left guard, I mean Evan Brown. For some reason, or well, for this, it's just gonna be Will Hernandez. So just envision that as Evan Brown. Um, but everything else is how it looks. It's supposed to be. We need an upgrade at left guard. We need an upgrade at center. And then if you go defensively, you need an upgrade at the tackle most likely, another linebacker in there, and then maybe a backup safety, and that's really all. Maybe a backup corner if obviously Jalen Smith's going to be your CB3, but maybe you want a fourth. You're really raising the floor of this team. Maybe you could look to another edge. Obviously Logan Hall has the ability to play edge, um, but you're looking for a backup edge, a backup linebacker, a backup safety, starting center, starting guard, and then probably a developmental tackle um, in this draft, and then maybe an RB3 if that's something people want to explore. Maybe a wide receiver if people want to explore that as well. If you're looking at the running backs in free agency, because I think there's an opportunity that we do sign them or sign one. Um, Rashad White did get a deal, same with Chris Rodriguez, but I like the idea of a Jerome Ford coming in to be a rotational back, or Bam Knight. I like the idea of him coming in to be a change of pace back. Keaton Mitchell too. Really explosive. So you could address the RB3 role in free agency. I don't think that's too much of an issue because you are Woody Marks injury away from a running back crisis, or a David Montgomery. Obviously, just David Montgomery doesn't get hurt nearly as often as a Woody Marks does. But at wide receiver, you could go out and get a burner like a Tutu Atwell, or you can go get a slot receiver like a Diami Brown or Greg Dortch even. So there's options in free agency. I don't know how much more the Texans will be active. Um, they could go for an edge rusher in here. They do have the money for it. 17 and a half, I think, is probably around the range. I think it's between 17 and 20 million that the Texans should be at, maybe 22. But Josh Pascal could be a good, decent edge rusher in terms of rotation guy. DJ Wanham, I like. I mean, obviously we had Okoronkwo as a Texan before, and he got a big deal, and he played well here. On the interior defensive line, you could look to, um, was it Deshaun Hand or Daquan Jones that got a contract? I think it was Deshaun Hand. Um, but yeah, you could look at Daquan Jones. You could look at Javon Hargrave. I think that's certainly an intriguing option in there. Um, Other than that, I mean, there's not much. Larry Ogunjobi's decent. Ashawn Robinson's decent. Sebastian Joseph Day obviously played under D'Amico Ryans as a D tackle in the 49ers scheme. Um, Derek Notty's decent. So there's a lot of intriguing options in the open market. I think you could go for a linebacker. Um, I think someone like a Matt Milano makes a lot of sense to Houston, or Keem Davis Gaither. But I don't know what else we do in terms of free agency. I think we do get our RB3 in free agency, or at least a guy that's going to compete throughout camp. And I really like the idea of what I said earlier with the Jerome Ford. So I'm going to go after him on a 2-year deal. Maybe 2.7. Would he do that? Um, I mean, we can just give him 2.9 or 2.8. Yeah, 2.8 is fine. And you bring in Jerome Ford to be your RB3, which is, I think, really well money spent. And then I think you look to maybe a backup linebacker or backup corner. Um, you know, I mean, I really like Kader Kohu, but he went somewhere. I don't remember exactly where. Cam Taylor Barrett, really good player. Martin Emerson, really good player. I believe he went somewhere though, or was that Greg Newsom? It was Greg Newsom that went somewhere. Kyrie Elam's definitely good depth. I don't know about being a starter, but he's good depth. Um, there's not much at corner though, so I think I am. I mean, Mike Hilton to be a backup nickel makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I'm gonna hold off on the corners. You're looking for special teams guys throughout the rest of free agency. Um, So I think it is time to just go to the draft, unless you do want to bring a Derek Barnett back, which I think the Texans could certainly do, because they need some help at edge, to be honest, in terms of the backup rotation. I don't know how much Barnett's going to get. I think he'll get somewhere around 7, and he takes that. So I'll take that all day of the week, and we'll head to the draft. With those two re-signings in there, we'll speed up a little bit. We'll go full draft. So I believe it should show our needs if we scroll down to our team. Guard, nose tackle, 3 tech, wide receiver, outside linebacker, tackle, center. Um, so, if we just go, I think 13 for Maui Noah. I mean, you'd have to give up 38 and pick back up like 93. I'm going to hold off on that. I think that's a little too much value. Um, there goes Peter Woods. Fano and Ione are still there. Jets are probably going to go with a guy. So we'll sim a little bit. They go back to back. Okay, that's a little annoying. And I guess we just go to 28 at this point. Caden Proctor goes there. Lomu goes there. Freeland goes there. So we're going to sit at 28, probably looking interior defensive line. Caden McDonald's there. Caleb Banks is there, and I think he's going to drop down boards a little bit because he broke his foot. I think the Texans, if they're in the spot, they're going to trade down. 30 in future capital makes a lot of sense. 32 in future capital also makes a lot of sense. We'll take the Denver deal. We don't have much capital next year. And then we're still at the same spot where we can go with anyone we want. And for me, I'm going to go with Caleb Banks to be our star D tackle. Blake Miller does go there. That's not really a concern for me. I think the Texans need to attack guard. Pregnon makes a lot of sense. I mean, even someone like a TJ Parker makes a lot of sense at 38, to be honest. And I think if you trade down slightly, more future capital could be intriguing. At 43, I'm going to do that. So we're picking up a lot of future capital in this draft because we know how talented next year's draft class is. And here at 43, I am going to pull the trigger on Emmanuel Pregnon there. Really good player in my opinion. Just really like the way he plays. Solid in the run game, solid in the pass game. Going to do everything you want him to. And I think that's very valuable. Jake Slaughter's all the way down at 97. That's someone I really like. Same with Logan Jones. And we do need a pick in that range, kind of. So if we could, I mean, I like 66 and 101, don't get me wrong, but the future capital we picked up is a second and a third. So, I mean, if you do this and pick up 89, I mean, I'd do that to pick up an extra spot in this draft. Obviously, it probably wouldn't be a second round pick in real life, but here at 59, I think you can go with an edge here, and I really like Joshua Josephs. I think you could go back up linebacker. I love Josiah Trotter. Y'all know that. And if we look at our picks, I am just going to pull the trigger on Josiah Trotter, I think, because we've gone with D tackle, guard, and then we know we're addressing center with our next pick. So I think your next biggest need is really linebacker, and I think Josiah Trotter certainly slots in well there. Connor Liu goes at 64. If he made it to 69, that would have been my selection, but I'll hold off on that. I'm not too beat up about that. Here at 69, I think he could go 2 guards. Keelan Rutledge makes a lot of sense. Mike Washington Jr. as a day 2 pick makes a lot of sense too. And it's certainly something you could explore because you have Jerome Ford there, but if you want a home run hitter, you could certainly look at a Mike Washington Jr. Grayson Halton's a really good player. But I think you can go with 2 guards in this draft. Maybe you want to look at the tackles. Someone like a Markel Bell could potentially be a day 2 pick just because he can play true tackle, or Nolan Rucci can play true tackle. So they might go higher. Jalen Farmer's a really good player. Just going to be a guard in the NFL. Austin Barber might be, if you look at the athletic measurements, the arms are 33, so he can play right tackle for you. If you want a developmental tackle, he could certainly be that guy. So, maybe you pull the trigger on back-to-back offensive linemen. But Keelan Rutledge is here. I think it makes too much sense for the Texans to go with someone like a Keelan Rutledge. So I'm going to pull the trigger there. Logan Jones and Jake Slaughter both go, which really sucks. Because that means you're probably going with the Sam Hecht. Who's a really good player, don't get me wrong. I like Sam Hecht. I just prefer Slaughter. And I think Logan Jones might be a day 2 pick. He's just a little small, but really good player. Slaughter bigger, but also very stout in the run game. Here at 89, though, I think I want to move up slightly. Okay, wait. I could do this and pick up the guys I want to pick up. So we'll move down. Um, and they're both still available. So here I'm going to secure my center. And go with Sam Hecht there. Barber does go there. That's fine. That's probably someone who I was thinking of selecting. But here at 106, I am going to address edge, and I think Kieran Crawford's certainly an intriguing one if you look at the measurements there. Um, Decent arm length, decent hands, um, a good height, weight, and decent production in the SEC this past year. I think this draft has turned out well. Banks, Pregnon, Trotter, Rutledge, Hecht, Crawford, and then you're looking at potentially tight end. Sam Roosh makes a lot of sense. You could look to wide receiver at this point. Um, Chase Roberts down the board. I like Aaron Anderson to be a slot guy. Um, Jalen Walthall. I know some people like him just because he went to our Incarnate Word. Jeff Caldwell's decent production. You know, uh, Great size too. Eric Rivers really good production. Um, that's someone that can be your slot guy. And, he stood out in everything he competed in, so I'll go with Eric Rivers there. Ndame Tucker goes there. That's certainly an intriguing option. Here at 167, though, I think you can go with your tight end here. And I'm going to go with Sam Roosh just to be a blocking tight end if you don't want to roll with either um, of the two between Stover and Brevin Jordan. That's who I'm blanking on. Then you could obviously go with a new tight end, Sam Roosh, really good blocker in there. Going to be like a Foster Moreau for you. So, you have a 3 tight end rotation that you're fine with if one has to sit out a game. 243, South McGowan makes a lot of sense. And that's how I'm going to round it out. So we will draft Seth McGowan. We'll finish there. It shows that we filled a lot of needs. I think if the Texans rounded the offseason that way, a lot of fans will be happy with how they attacked the draft, getting, a starting guard and then a developmental guard to potentially be behind Evan Brown or Ed Ingram. And, maybe you want to develop Pregnon or Rutledge into a center if you don't get a Sam Hecht, but I think Sam Hecht's really good. Maybe you want a guard that can play tackle, like a Caden Proctor. So, those are all things to consider, but I think this is, going to be a similar way that the Texans do approach the rest of this offseason. If you want to simulate the season, we can, go ahead and do that. Why not? Let's have some fun here. Um, let's see what they have the Houston Texans coming in at. For some reason, I can't move Xavier Thomas. Derek Barnett's there too, so we're pretty fine. But yeah, we'll just simulate this season. Let's see. We went 9-8. We're the 7 seed. We beat Jacksonville, and we lose to Buffalo. So we're gonna lose in the divisional round next year if we go with this offseason. And this says, as Philadelphia wins the Super Bowl as always. So yeah, let me know what y'all think about this potential offseason down in the comment section below. Do you enjoy the way it panned out? Obviously, if you want to look at the roster, here it is. Kieran Crawford to be a developmental edge to play behind Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter, obviously, in alongside Derek Barnett on that rotation. Caleb Banks to come in, so you have a D-line rotation of Togiai, Jones, Rankins, Banks, and Hall. Probably Banks and Togiai as your first 2. Rankins and Jones as your next 2. Logan Hall to be that hybrid guy. Really good player in my opinion, though. Logan Hall is. Jones might be the D tackle 5 in that scenario, actually. Josiah Trotter to develop behind EJ Speed or Henry To'oTo'o if you don't want to pay To'oTo'o heading into next offseason. Maybe you want to get a corner. I think that's one thing I could have addressed. But I think it went well. So let me know what y'all think down in the comment section below. We're so close to hitting 500 subscribers. I think at the time of recording this, I was at 492. So 8 more, and then we hit that goal of 500 subscribers, and then live streams will begin. So please, if you enjoy the content, please consider subscribing. Does mean a lot. And as always, it's Texans Takeover, and I'm out. Thanks again for watching. Peace.